Shaolin Kung Fu and its practicing monks are legendary figures that have populated culture all over the world. From music to film and even comic books, their legendary reputation is often preceded by tales of the incredible feats of mental and physical endurance that these master monks have been doing for centuries. Yet how much of this is real and how much of it is just legend? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Infographic Show. Today we're going to take a look at one of these individuals and delve into the incredible world of super-powered monks as we learn about the unbreakable monk who can't get hurt. Zhao Rui is a 29-year-old monk living in China who has become famous after Russia Today broadcast a video of his incredible feats across the internet. According to Rui, he ran away from home at the age of 16 after becoming fascinated with martial arts. His goal was to join a Shaolin temple and dedicate his life to mastering his physical and mental selves. For 2 years, Rui studied at his temple, being trained in Sando or Chinese kickboxing and hard Qigong, or the practice of drawing great physical strength and endurance from an inner energy known as Qi. After learning all he could from his temple, he left in search of masters who could further his training and spent his life moving from temple to temple, honing his mind and body. According to Rui, he used to be a very self-conscious and nervous kid, and perhaps because of his shortcomings, he dedicated his life to making his mind and body incredibly tough. Whatever his motivation, it's safe to say that Rui achieved his goal, as today the monk is capable of incredible feats which would severely injure or kill normal people. One such stunt involves Rui laying on 4 sharpened metal spears, during which he uses special breathing techniques and deep mental focus to toughen his flesh so that his skin is able to actually prevent him from being impaled. But is Rui's skin truly unbreakable? In the famous bed of nails stunt, where individuals lay happily and uninjured across a bed of nails, the body's weight and force of gravity pulling on the body are both dispersed across the heads of hundreds of tiny nails. While the head of a single nail may not seem like much surface area, add that up across the hundreds that make up the traditional bed of nails, and you come up with a pretty large amount of surface area for the body's weight and gravity's force to be dispersed across. This prevents the nails from piercing the skin, as you would normally expect them to do so. So does Rui's spear trick do the same thing? That's likely, given that Rui always provides his own spears. And if you've ever seen the feat repeated by so-called Shaolin stage shows, you'll notice that the spears are in fact not sharply tipped at all, but rather blunted. While being able to lay your full body weight on even a blunted spear is still an impressive feat, a further investigation into how this feat is done reveals Rui's secret. The spear points are always placed on his thighs, his abdomen, and his collarbone. The collarbone is very dense and can easily resist the force of the blunted spear. And as with the body of any extremely well-developed athlete, the abdominal and thigh muscles, some of the strongest in the body, can be with effort hardened considerably. The real trick here is the way that Rui is able to ignore what must be considerable pain and flex his muscles so as to stiffen them for such a long time. Rui's next trick is the bending of iron rebar using just his throat, which when you see it admittedly looks like both an incredible feat and something incredibly uncomfortable to consider doing yourself. Rebar is, after all, used to reinforce concrete, so it must be pretty tough stuff. Well, yes and no. See, rebar works by bundling large groups of rods together, yet the individual rods are thin enough to be flexible. This helps a building have just enough flexibility when needed to not shatter, yet the groups of rods together are able to lend great strength. It's a bit like taking a single matchstick and crushing it in your fingers, yet when you take 10 of them and try to repeat that feat, they're able to share the stress equally and resist being crushed. There's also the fact that Rui always bends very long bars, and as most of us know, the longer an object is, the more prone it is to bending and the easier it is to do so. If you need even more proof, though, simply Google normal people bending rebar with their throats. You'll soon see that it's a favorite stunt of self-help and confidence-boosting seminars, with everyday people, like you and me, called on stage and told that if they believe in themselves, they can bend rebar. Then the individuals, who typically pay upwards of $1,500 per seminar, magically rush toward each other and bend the iron bar, typically hugging in joy at their newfound super confidence. Turns out they could have saved $1,500 if they just believed in physics. Then, of course, there's the infamous electric drill bit, where Rui takes a modern electric drill, allows an assistant to press it against his head, and then fires it up. Rui screams, focusing his body's chi at the point the drill is pressing against his skull in order to resist the drilling. At least, that's what it looks like he's doing. A closer inspection, however, reveals that, first of all, the drill is running counterclockwise, which is not the direction you would want to run a drill if you wanted to actually drill into an object. Drill bits have special grooves cut into them that, when powered up, bite into the material. And as the drill bit spins, the grooves mechanically force the drill bit deeper into the material. When run backwards, though, the mechanical action actually forces the drill bit backwards, as it pushes against the material that it is inside of. By running the drill backwards, the tip of the drill bit is actually trying to push itself away from Rui's head, not bore inside of it. Then there's also the fact that nobody has ever been allowed to inspect the drill bit itself. Yet, from what can be seen in his video and from other similar videos, the drill bits seem to be suspiciously blunted at the tip. Even running the drill backwards while pushing the drill into the skull would do some serious damage to the skin, and a bit of flesh between it and the bone. But a dulled bit would have no way of biting into the skin, and would simply spin in place, doing exactly what we see as the end result in every one of these videos, reddening the area severely, and possibly drawing a bit of blood. Lastly, there's the fact that a bystander is never allowed to assist with the drilling, and instead Rui or any of his copycats always have their own assistant, or do the drilling themselves. While drilling themselves, it's obviously easy to keep the drill pressed close enough to look real without actually putting enough force that the dulled drill bit would actually do some damage. In Rui's video though, perhaps the most damning bit of evidence against this trick is the fact that he routinely puts his own hand on the drill, likely to provide enough pushback so that the assistant knows not to push any harder. Next is another staple of Rui and other alleged Shaolin practitioners' pseudo-magic shows. This is where Rui takes a long metal bar and repeatedly bashes it against his own head until the bar bends. This is supposedly showing off Rui's incredible toughness and durability, as surely it's his only mystical mastery of chi energy that keeps him from concussing himself in unconsciousness. Well, you've probably guessed it, but we're gonna ruin this one for you too. Careful observation of the bar that's always used in this stunt reveals that it's very long and almost always has a weighted tip on one end. Typically, the weighted tip is adorned with metal rings as a sort of rattler to make a dramatic sound as Rui smashes the bar into his head. Yet the weighted tip also adds more weight to one end of the bar than the other, which becomes important as we carefully observe Rui's technique. As can be easily seen in his videos, Rui smashes the bar into his head repeatedly at the midpoint of the bar, which forces the lower half of the bar to rapidly decelerate. The upper half, however, is still moving very quickly, and the stress of sudden deceleration is channeled to the point of contact between Rui's skull and the bar, the middle. Think back to the example of squeezing upright matches between your fingers. Where do they break? The middle, because that's where they're structurally weakest. The longer an object is, the weaker it becomes at its midsection, which is why modern ships are built in sections that are joined together. In Rui's case, the weighted tip, which dramatically rattles with each impact, helps lend more weight to one end of the bar than the other, the end which is still traveling at high speeds as the middle of the bar is suddenly decelerated by Rui's skull. This adds additional force to the top of the bar, helping it bend. But wait, because we've saved the best for last. Although admittedly that drill to the head thing was pretty jaw-dropping, until we debunked it anyway. In Rui's final example of superhumandom, he shows off a large knife which he quickly chops up some fruit with, displaying its sharpness. Then he loops a bit of metal between the handle and about midway up the large blade, and slides his head inside the loop that's created. He then places the sharp edge of the blade against his throat, and then has the loop attached to another rope, which itself is tied to a parked van. The van is put into neutral, and Rui incredibly pulls the van along while avoiding slicing his own jugular open. Absolutely incredible! Or at least it would be if the stunt were real. You guessed it, it's not. First, when Rui demonstrates the sharpness of the blade, he's always seen using the front half of the very large knife to slice the fruit or vegetable. He's always very careful not to show the knife edge onto the camera, which would give away the fact that the bottom half of the large blade is actually dulled. At this point, the stunt is no different than his laying on spears. The force on the blunted edge of the knife is dispersed sufficiently to cause nothing more than a very red mark. Sadly, Xiao Ri is not a master of the mystical energy field that permeates all life known as Qi, and is instead a master of what many modern martial arts practitioners have termed Bushido. While Rui is in fact an extremely talented athlete, and does display incredible mental fortitude to be able to bear large amounts of pain, his feats don't prove that he's an unbreakable Shaolin monk, but rather that he's a very clever stage magician, and that physics is a thing. Sadly, with everything Shaolin being popularized around the world by mass media, performers everywhere have popped up putting on very profitable and very fake displays of their superpowers achieved by mastering ancient techniques. Of course, the actual Shaolin Temple in China has not been of any help in reclaiming China's real cultural treasures, as they have been too busy happily licensing their name on everything from instant noodles to cigarettes.